The Lockerbie bombing became the subject of Britain's largest criminal inquiry, led by its smallest police force, the Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary. This widely regarded assault on a symbol of the United States stood as the deadliest terrorist attack on American civilians until September 11, 2001. But there was a long backstory that led to this event, and a subsequent investigation by many nations that would alter the way the intelligence communities cooperated and created a much better international criminal investigative method. It would take time to unravel all the secrets within the evidence left behind. Let's look into the Lockerbie tragedy. What led up to Pan Am Flight 103 bombing? How did U.S. and foreign intelligence discover who was behind it? What did the investigation reveal? What was the ultimate reaction and retaliation? Who was finally held responsible? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. In the early hours of April 5, 1986, a bomb exploded in the La Belle Friedenau discotheque in West Berlin, killing 3 people: Turkish woman Nermin Haney, aged 28, and 2 American GIs, Kenneth T. Ford, aged 20, and James E. Goins, aged 28, with 229 additional people injured. The U.S. had intercepted several communiques that identified Libyan terrorists operating in East Berlin as being responsible. It was also learned that Libya was planning terrorist attacks against U.S. diplomatic missions in 10 African countries and 30 other American embassies in the Middle East and Latin America. In one African country, for example, 3 Libyan agents were reportedly planning to bomb a U.S. embassy and to kidnap the ambassador. April 14, 1986, the United States launched airstrikes against Libya in retaliation. Libyan leader Muammar al-Gaddafi's young daughter was killed along with dozens of other people, and he vowed revenge. Gaddafi was deeply involved with the Palestine Liberation Organization and Yasser Arafat, as well as having support from Cuba, the Soviet Union, and all the Warsaw Pact nations. On December 21, 1988, Gaddafi made good on his threat when Pan American Flight 103 was targeted. The next day, on December 22, 1988, the world was shocked as news reports and video showed the results of the bombing of the Boeing 747, which took off from London bound for New York City. Not long after takeoff, it exploded over the town of Lockerbie in the Dumfries and Galloway region of southwest Scotland, killing 270 people from 21 countries, 259 passengers and crew members, plus 11 people on the ground in Lockerbie who were killed in their homes as the fiery debris destroyed an entire city block. The dead included 35 Syracuse University students as they were returning home to the United States for the holidays after a semester studying abroad. A total of 43 victims were from the United Kingdom. The plastic explosive that detonated in the forward cargo hold triggered a sequence of events that led to the rapid destruction of the aircraft. Winds scattered victims and debris along 81 miles of corridor and 845 square miles in the area. The investigation would last and be concluded over 11 years later, as there were millions of pieces of evidence that had to be collected, forensically analyzed, basically a massive jigsaw puzzle to reassemble the aircraft as best they could. However, the cause would be found much sooner. This became the largest joint criminal investigation in history, which involved 23 nations and all the various law enforcement, intelligence, and legal personnel from numerous countries, and they worked together very well. A few months after the plane crash and after the formal recovery effort was completed, a piece of scorched shirt was discovered. The piece contained a fragment of circuit board that the heat of the explosion had fused into the shirt's polyester fabric. Scottish forensic teams photographed the circuit board fragment and gave a photo to the FBI, which they shared with the CIA, where a Directorate of Science and Technology electronics expert observed two things that reminded him of a device he had seen before, which was a timer from an earlier Libyan terrorist attack. Further analysis confirmed that the fragment exactly matched part of a timer circuit manufactured specifically for the Libyans. The bomb had been hidden inside an audio cassette player, which detonated in the cargo bay when the plane reached 31,000 feet. Then the pieces began coming together, as Islamic terrorists were accused of planting the bomb on the plane while it was at the airport in Frankfurt, Germany during the loading process. Authorities suspected the attack was in retaliation either for the 1986 U.S. airstrikes against Libya and Muammar Gaddafi, or a 1988 incident in which the USS Vincennes shot down an Iran Air commercial flight over the Persian Gulf, killing 290 people. Identifying who was responsible would take more time. What surfaced during the investigation was that 16 days before Flight 103 was bombed, the U.S. Embassy in Helsinki, Finland, received a call warning that a bomb would be placed on a Pan Am flight out of Frankfurt. There is controversy over how seriously the U.S. took the threat and whether travelers should have been alerted, but officials later said that the connection between the call and the bomb was coincidental. However, many disagree. As the joint investigation continued, the United Kingdom's MI5, MI6, and the FBI worked well together, along with West German GSG-9, and they all came to the same undeniable facts independently of each other in 1991. Due to the forensic evidence, proven travel itineraries, and known locations of several persons with Libyan intelligence, agents Abdel Basset al-megrahi and Lamin Khalifa Fima were indicted for murder and placed on Interpol's Red Notice list. According to the affidavit in support of the criminal complaint, the External Security Organization, or ESO, the Libyan intelligence service through which Libya conducted acts of terrorism against other nations and threatened Libyan dissidents abroad, was identified as the culprit. Gaddafi refused to hand over the suspects to the United States. The UN, led by the UK and USA, launched crippling sanctions on Libya, including a blockade at sea where the U.S. Navy patrolled the Gulf of Sidra. Libyan oil was going nowhere, and nothing was coming in. Finally, in 1999, in an effort to release some of the United Nations sanctions against his country, Gaddafi agreed to turn over the two men to Scotland for trial in the Netherlands using Scottish law and prosecutors. The reason was because the World Court using Scottish law could not impose a death penalty. During the trial in 2000, the CIA's DS&T officer testified as an expert witness. To protect his identity, he was in disguise, used an alias, and had his voice electronically altered. The CIA officer differentiated the timers of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine General Command from those used by the Libyans, and identified the circuit board fragment to be from a Libyan timer. These facts were crucial because the Libyans' defense rested on the premise that the PFLP-GC and not the Libyans had bombed Pan Am 103. It was this testimony and his identification of the circuit board fragment that was the key evidence that led to the conviction of one of the two accused Libyan terrorists. German records also prove that al-megrahi, along with Tunisian-born Abu Aghila Mohammed Masoud Khair al-Marimi, were in fact in Frankfurt at that time. Al-Marimi worked in various capacities for the ESO, including as a technical expert in building explosive devices, from approximately 1973 to 2011. In early 2001, al-Megrahi was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, and FEMA was acquitted for lack of evidence. However, despite the U.S. government's objections, al-Megrahi was released and returned to Libya in August 2009 after doctors determined that he had only months to live due to liver cancer. Later, that diagnosis turned out to be an error, as his early-stage cancer was treatable and he died many years later in Libya in 2012. Then there were the civil lawsuits filed by the families in a class action against Libya. In 2003, Libya finally accepted responsibility for the bombing but didn't express remorse. The UN and US lifted sanctions against Libya when Gaddafi agreed to pay each victim's family approximately $8 million in restitution. In 2004, Libya's prime minister said that the deal was the price for peace, implying that his country only took responsibility to get the sanctions lifted, a statement that infuriated the victims' families. Pan Am Airlines, which went bankrupt 3 years after the bombing, also sued Libya and later received a $30 million settlement for the loss of the aircraft. But the investigation was still not over, because in December 2020, the U.S. Justice Department, including Attorney General William Barr, Director of the FBI Christopher Wray, Assistant Attorney General for National Security John Demers, and Acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia Michael Sherwin, announced new charges against the other suspect in the bombing, Abu Aguila Mohammed Masoud al-Megrahi. According to the affidavit in support of the criminal complaint, in the winter of 1988, Masoud was summoned by a Libyan intelligence official to meet at that official's office in Tripoli, Libya, where he was directed to fly to Malta with a prepared suitcase. He did so, where he was met by Megrahi and FEMA at the airport. After Masoud spent approximately 3 or 4 days in the hotel, Megrahi and FEMA instructed Masoud al-Megrahi to set the timer on the device in the suitcase for the following morning so that the explosion would occur exactly 11 hours later. According to the same affidavit, the suitcase used by Masoud al-Megrahi was a medium-sized Samsonite suitcase that he used for traveling. Megrahi and FEMA were both at the airport on the morning of December 21, 1988, and Masoud al-Megrahi handed the suitcase to FEMA. FEMA then placed the suitcase on the conveyor belt as Masoud al-Megrahi left after being given a boarding pass for a Libyan flight to Tripoli, leaving Frankfurt at 0900 hours or 9 a.m. 3 or 4 days after returning to Libya, Masoud al-Megrahi and Megrahi met with a senior Libyan intelligence official who thanked them for a successful operation. Approximately 3 months after that, Masoud al-Megrahi and FEMA met with Gaddafi and others who thanked them for performing a great national duty against the Americans, and Gaddafi added that the operation was a total success. What has not been disclosed is how the electronic communications, telephone intercepts, and other non-physical data was collected. One hypothesis is that the Israeli Mossad gave this information as they monitored all potential Arab terrorist nations and their communications. Other theories are that both the U.S. National Security Agency, GSG-9, or perhaps even Britain's MI5 or MI6 had been collecting data over the years. Chances are it was all of these organizations which, working independently of each other, thus corroborating each other, made a very strong case. However, a breakthrough in the investigation in 2017 happened when the U.S. received a copy of an interview that Masoud, a longtime explosives expert for Libya's intelligence service, admitted to building the bomb in the Pan Am attack and working with the other 2 conspirators. That statement had been given to Libyan law enforcement in 2012 after he was taken into custody following the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi. In December 2022, the U.S. Justice Department announced that Abu Aguila Mohammed Masoud al-Megrahi, also known as Hassan Abu Ojelia Ibrahim, was arrested by the FBI for his suspected role in the bombing. On December 21, 2020, 32 years after the bombing, Attorney General William Barr gave the following statement. I would like to publicly and personally express my deepest thanks to the Lord Advocate of Scotland, James Wolfe, QC, for the tireless efforts of his dedicated prosecutors from the Crown Office and investigators from police in Scotland. These charges are the product of decades of hard work by investigators and prosecutors who have remained resolute in their dogged pursuit of justice for our citizens, the citizens of the United Kingdom, and the citizens of 19 other countries that were murdered by terrorists operating on behalf of the former Muammar Gaddafi regime when they attacked Pan Am Flight 103. As to all the victims and the families, we cannot take away your pain from your loss, but we can seek justice for you. Our message to other terrorists around the world is this: you will not succeed if you attack Americans. No matter where you are, no matter how long it takes, you will be pursued to the ends of the earth until justice is done. FBI Director Chris Wray also stated, "Without the thoroughness and professionalism of our FBI personnel, the Department of Justice, our Scottish partners, and the people of Lockerbie, we never would have found the trail that led us to the men responsible for this attack. We will never forget the loved ones who were lost, and we remain committed to continuing our work to achieve justice for the victims and their families." Acting U.S. Attorney Michael R. Sherwin for the District of Columbia also gave this statement. First, the criminal complaint against the alleged lawmaker signifies that the work of federal prosecutors never ends, even after several decades, until all criminal actors are held accountable. In addition, these charges remind the public of the horrific effect that acts of terrorism continue to have on victims and their families. The bombing of Pan Am 103 was historic in that it was, until the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the largest terrorist attack on U.S. civilians in history. It also remains the deadliest terrorist attack in the history of the United Kingdom. For all of these reasons, we will never forget, and the D.C. United States Attorney's Office will continue to seek justice for all of the Pan Am 103 victims and their loved ones. During the federal arraignment in February 2023, Masood pled not guilty, and he was held in custody without bail. In December 2023, a trial was set for May 2025. Masood al-Megrahi faces a life sentence on each murder charge, and the death penalty was an option with a fine of up to $250,000. But at the December 2023 hearing, it was determined that al-Megrahi will not face the death penalty because the bombing occurred before the specific charges which he faces carried a possible penalty of capital punishment. A further hearing was held in February 2024 where Judge Maxula Upadhyaya to hear arguments on whether al-Megrahi should be detained or released on bail, which is afforded to defendants before a trial. He remains in custody. The greatest tragedy is the families who were so heavily impacted by the disaster. One great example is Paul Hudson, who carried a photograph of his daughter, Melina, a 16-year-old student who had been returning for the Christmas holidays from the exchange program. He recalled how, after the crash, her belongings were scattered around the Lockerbie countryside. The family did get back her passport and her notebook. And the notebook had on the cover the quote, "No one dies unless they're forgotten, and I've tried to live by that," her father said. Remembrances of his daughter are an everyday thing, and this time of year it gets stronger. We will post an update after that trial and when the information becomes available. Let's hope that justice is finally served. Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.